He escaped from handcuffs and sealed crates, but his greatest trick might have been exposing the fakes pretending to speak to the dead. And for that, he brought the battle all the way to Congress. Did Houdini really try to outlaw psychics with federal legislation? Let's find out on this week's episode of The Internet Says It's True. Welcome to The Internet Says It's True, where every week we learn something that sounds like I just made it up, but it's really true. This is part of the WCBE podcast experience. My name's Michael Kent. This is episode 245. Thanks for tuning in. Later on in the episode, we'll be joined by Congressman Mark Pocan from the great state of Wisconsin, so you'll definitely want to catch that. I mentioned it somewhat cryptically last week, and I'll say it again, equally as cryptically. Something big and awesome is in the works, and I have spilled the beans on Patreon and nowhere else. You can learn about that on patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's where you go to become a Tizitor and talk about episodes, plus get discounts on merch, ad-free episodes, exclusive videos and announcements. Sign up today. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent. You can do that at any level. Just 3 cents a day, and you can get all the goodies and support the podcast. Speaking of the podcast, I was just looking at the Apple Podcasts app, and I read this review. Quote, "It's no wonder this podcast is growing quickly. It's a fun, unique way to take on historical events and theories surrounding them. The host is great." Thank you. "And easy to follow. Keeps my interest weekly with its vast array of topics. Highly recommend." Thank you so much for that review, Jax. Keep those reviews coming in. It's a great way to show your appreciation for the show without having to spend those 3 cents a day. You can do that for free. You can do that on the Apple Podcasts app. It really does mean a lot to me to see those reviews, and it lets me know that my hard work here is reaching people. This week's story is one about Harry Houdini, and while I knew part of the story, I didn't know all of it. Let's get into it. If you've ever seen a late-night commercial for a psychic hotline or passed a blinking neon sign reading palm readings, $10, you've probably wondered, are there really laws against this? Like, is it legal to tell someone you can talk to their dead uncle in exchange for cash? And the answer is complicated. Fraud laws exist, yes, but specific laws against fortune-telling or like astrology or being a medium, in some cities, sure, those laws exist, but not many, which makes what Harry Houdini tried to do in 1926 all the more fascinating. Before we get into that, let's take a little side road, because Houdini wasn't the only person with a vendetta against psychic frauds. In fact, over the last century, many of the biggest names in magic have also been the loudest voices against spiritualism and psychic trickery. There's something poetic about that. The people who make a living deceiving you, like myself, with illusions, are often the most passionate defenders of truth. Some people just think it's harmless fun, and others think that it's a cruel lie that not only deceives people who are grieving, but also takes their money. Personally, I have a book that's very hard to get that was once used as a guidebook to teach normal people like you or me to be able to do what's called cold reading. Cold reading is a skill that allows you to tell people things about themselves that sound very specific, but can apply to almost anyone. And there are plenty of examples of statements like this, but the book I have was supposedly used as a guidebook to teach people how to do this for a very famous psychic phone hotline in the 90s. The debunking of psychics goes back throughout history, and that includes people like James Randi, who founded the $1 million Paranormal Challenge in the 1960s, offering $1 million to anyone who could demonstrate supernatural powers under controlled conditions. No one ever collected. Randi spent decades debunking spoonbenders and faith healers and mediums, and no one ever collected the prize. And then there's Penn and Teller, who've made exposing fraud part of their act for more than 40 years. In particular, I highly encourage you to check out the television series they made called Bullshit. They tackle a lot of claims, but the very first episode of the very first season deals with debunking psychics. It's a long tradition, one that arguably started with Houdini himself. Harry Houdini, born Eric Weiss in 1874 in Budapest, immigrated with his family to the United States when he was 4. He grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin, and later New York City. And his first job was a locksmith. It's true, and it explains a lot. He got his stage name from the French magician Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin, whom he once admired but then later criticized in a scathing book. Houdini became famous in the 1900s for daring escape acts, being handcuffed and tossed into rivers or hanging upside down in a straitjacket from buildings, and even escaping from a sealed milk can filled with water. Even now, 100 years later, the name Houdini is synonymous with stage magic and escapes. But by the 1920s, Houdini had turned his attention towards something else entirely. After the death of his beloved mother, Cecilia Steiner Weiss, in 1913, Houdini became obsessed with the possibility of life after death. He and his wife Bess even developed a secret code, a series of words that he said he would try to communicate to her if he ever passed on. He desperately wanted to believe, but what he found time and time again was that the people claiming to speak to the dead were frauds. Spiritualism was huge at the time. Seances, table tipping, ghost photography, it was a booming industry, and not just among the gullible, highly educated people, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, were devoted believers in spiritualism. Doyle's own son had died in World War I, and like many grieving parents, he found comfort in the idea of the afterlife. He believed that mediums could serve as sort of a bridge to the spirit world. Doyle and Houdini were actually great friends at one point, until Houdini started publicly denouncing spiritualism. Their friendship fell apart spectacularly after a famous seance in 1922. Doyle's wife, Jean, who claimed to be a medium, tried to channel Houdini's deceased mother. Houdini sat patiently, saying nothing. She drew a cross at the top of the paper. But Houdini's mother had been Jewish. Then the message came, 15 pages in fluent English. His mother barely spoke English in life. Houdini thanked them politely and never spoke to Doyle again. From then on, Houdini made it his mission to expose the tricks of the trade. He infiltrated seances in disguise, bringing along police officers or newspaper reporters. He would sit quietly while the medium did their thing. They would do spirit trumpets and ghostly hands. They'd maybe make the lights flicker, and then at the end he would stand up and reveal the wires and the hidden compartments, the sleight of hand they were using. He exposed dozens of high-profile mediums this way, and he would often embarrass them very publicly. One of his key investigators was Rose Mackenberg, a private detective who traveled the country attending seances undercover. She was incredibly good at her job. She would keep notes and observe these tricks and then tell Houdini about them. And between the two of them, they built a damning case against the spiritualist industry. Eventually, Houdini took his crusade to the press. In 1924, he published A Magician Among the Spirits, was a book that revealed the secrets used by fraudulent mediums. He detailed the mechanics behind spirit rapping. In this use, rapping means knocking. They weren't making rap music. But they were supposedly playing ghost trumpets and making phantom hands and all sorts of other seance paraphernalia. He would basically expose all these, and then he would name names. This wasn't just about public education, it was a warning shot. At that same time, the Scientific American magazine had created a contest, $2,500, to any medium who could prove their abilities under scientific scrutiny. Houdini was one of the judges. Mediums from all over tried and failed to pass this test. The most famous of them was Mina Marjorie Crandon, a Boston socialite who had become something of a celebrity medium. Houdini called her out, saying she used tricks like ringing bells with her toes or hiding ectoplasm in her underwear. We'll talk about ectoplasm later on. He even built a special box, which he called a Margie box, that restricted her movements during seances. So it was no surprise when in 1926 Houdini took this fight to Congress. He supported a bill in the House of Representatives introduced by Congressman Saul Bloom of New York. The bill sought to ban fortune-telling and spiritualistic practices for profit in the District of Columbia. Houdini testified before the House Committee on the District of Columbia on February 26, 1926. He was joined by Rose Mackenberg and several others who supported anti-fraud measures, and their goal was simple: to make it illegal to charge money for claiming to communicate with the dead. The hearing grew heated. One spiritualist lawyer tried to challenge Houdini on the spot, only to be sharply rebuked. "I am here as a volunteer, but I will not be insulted," Houdini barked, which drew cheers and boos from the opposite sides of the chamber. The New York Times called the hearing uproarious. People fainted. Someone shouted that seances were happening in the White House. But how close did Houdini really come to banning psychic fraud? And what happened in the final months of his life? We'll find out after the break. If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent.
We're living through the most dynamic time in human history, and what we do as leaders matter. We are the ones that create the leverage to shift directions of our companies, our nonprofits, and our communities. As a leader or an emerging leader, please join me for a dynamic conversation with top thought leaders, academics, and executives to learn more about how to elevate your leadership. I'm Maureen Metcalf. Join us at the WCBE podcast experience at wcbe.org.
I'm John DeSando, host of Back Talk. This podcast is an extension of the long-running, award-winning movie review show, It's Movie Time. Back Talk features additional content and banter with guests about new movies. If you want more insight and information about what's playing now in theaters and online, find Back Talk at the WCBE podcast experience on wcbe.org. You'll be happy you did.
There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsayitstrue.com/deals for the link.
Hey, I'm Cliff Baumgardner.
And I'm Harrison Stewart.
If you're like us, you probably grew up watching the Discovery Channel classic, Mythbusters.
From rocket cars to chicken cannons, Mythbusters proved there's no question too big, too small, or too ridiculous to put to the test.
Now we're going back to rewatch the show from episode 1, and we want you to follow along. Join us as we revisit every single myth, moment, experiment, and explosion from throughout the show's legendary 14 seasons. Subscribe now so you don't miss one.
Harry Houdini pressed on. He told the House committee that spiritualists were not only fooling the grieving, but actively defrauding them of money. He detailed how mediums used hidden trumpets to create ghostly voices and how ectoplasm was really made from muslin fabric soaked in egg whites, and how cold reading could elicit emotional responses from even the most skeptical participants. Rose Mackenberg backed him up with detailed notes from dozens of seances she attended across the country. They made a compelling case. But spiritualists pushed back, and they pushed back hard. They accused Houdini of religious persecution. They said he was mocking deeply held beliefs. One lawyer said banning seances was akin to banning prayer. Some accused him of showboating just for publicity. But to Houdini, this wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a public service. He believed no one else could challenge these frauds as effectively as he could. Ultimately, the committee voted 5-3 in favor of the anti-fraud bill. It was a partial victory, but short-lived. The Senate never took it up. The bill died quietly in committee. Washington had moved on. The newspapers, however, did not. Houdini's testimony was front-page news, and the hearing solidified his reputation as more than just a performer. He was a watchdog for truth. But Houdini would never see the long-term results of his efforts. That fall, in October of 1926, Houdini was performing in Montreal when a college student asked whether it was true that he could take a punch to the stomach. Houdini said yes, but before he could brace himself and set up his stomach muscles, the student delivered a blow to his abdomen. Houdini went on stage that night but was in pain for days. He kept performing, and eventually, he collapsed. Doctors discovered that his appendix had ruptured. He died in Detroit on Halloween at the age of 52. In the years following his death, Bess Houdini continued to hold seances every October 31st, using the secret code they had agreed on. For 10 years, she waited for a message from her husband. None came. Eventually, she gave up and stopped the seances. She said 10 years is long enough to wait for any man. Several came close, but no one was ever able to produce that secret code. We now know that the code that Bess was waiting on was Rosabelle Believe. Rosabelle was the song that Bess sang in her act when Houdini and Bess first met. The word believe was to be spelled out with a series of words: answer, tell, pray, answer, look, tell, answer, answer, tell. Each word stood for a letter which Harry and Bess knew how to decipher. Houdini's legacy lives on, not just in magic, but in skepticism. His congressional testimony is often cited in books and articles about consumer protection and scientific inquiry. Rose Mackenberg continued her work for decades, exposing fake mediums across the country. And while the James Randi Educational Foundation is no longer active, groups like the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry carry on the work of shining light into the darkness of pseudoscience and deception. Harry Houdini didn't just escape from chains. He helped others escape from false hope. The internet says it's true. It's time for Yap Yap with me and a friend. Today we're talking with Representative Mark Pocan. Congressman Pocan was sworn in as the U.S. Representative for Wisconsin's 2nd Congressional District in 2013, following 14 years in the Wisconsin State Assembly. A small business owner, union member, and advocate for progressive causes, Representative Pocan fights for policies that promote economic and social justice and support the families of South Central Wisconsin. Also, and this is how I know this gentleman, Representative Pocan is also a magician who uses magic to educate his constituents on what's going on in Washington with his weekly Magic Mondays. These are magic videos on the internet. Really great stuff. Thanks for joining us, Representative Pocan. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know it's always difficult. You're busy with committee meetings and whatnot, and I know it's hard to get away for a few. We won't take too much of your time. And before we get into today's episode questions, do you have a fact that you brought with you, maybe something that we haven't heard before?
Well, this is one I thought you might enjoy, being from Ohio. Jim Jordan, who I know you all know quite well in Ohio. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison the exact same 4 years.
No way.
Yeah. So, we couldn't be probably more different politically, but we both came out of the same university. I'm sure I probably was at a party he was at. I didn't know him then.
I was going to say, do you remember running into him? Maybe, no. I don't know. Do you remember headlines from the wrestling team or anything like that from when he was there?
That's the thing. I probably never went to a wrestling game, sport, whatever you'd call it.
Yeah.
He probably, I don't know if he was even active politically, but it is interesting that, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, known for being very progressive, had two very different products during those years.
Well, I am myself am very progressive, and I grew up in the same area as Mr. Jordan, being from Urbana, Ohio. That's his district. And we knew the Jordan name because he, and I believe he has some brothers that were in the wrestling program at Graham High School, which is just down the street from where I went to high school. Everyone knew the Jordan name as wrestlers. That's how I grew up, was knowing them that way, not as what we know him now, which is not as a politician, but as the subject matter of a current Netflix documentary.
Yes, and his three sons all went to the UW, and I believe they may have all wrestled as well. So he is a big Badger fan, and also Marcy Kaptur, from Ohio, also went to Madison. So we've got this Wisconsin-Ohio connection with a lot of your members.
That's amazing. Well, I did not know that, and so that is a winner. So let's get into the actual subject matter here. For question one, we're going to play for a joke. Now, for my listeners, I'm going to remind you, Mark has not heard this episode yet, so he doesn't know what this is about. And we're playing for a joke. So if you get it wrong, you got to tell us a joke. If you get it right, I will tell you one. Here's your question.
All right.
And the first four questions are all multiple choice.
Okay.
Who testified before Congress in 1926 to advocate anti-fraud legislation for psychics? Was it A, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, B, Rosa Mackenberg, or C, Harry Houdini?
Harry Houdini, and I have a copy of the manuscript from the days that he gave testimony.
No way. That is correct, and I am super impressed, and I want to see that. I would love to see a copy of that. I looked for if there was audio from it or anything like that, and I couldn't find any actual media.
I will find this because someone was printing some copies of it, and I got a copy for myself, and I got a copy actually for David Copperfield, and he's got it in his library at his museum.
That's incredible. Yeah, when I was at the museum, this was years ago, I did get to look in. There's a file cabinet with all kinds of like correspondence between Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Houdini before they had their falling out, and really interesting stuff. So I owe you a joke.
All right.
Did you hear about the little person who was a psychic who escaped from prison?
No.
The headline in the newspaper read "Small Medium at Large."
Oh no. Okay. I like it. I like it.
Horrible. It's a pun joke. It's a pun joke. I know that you got that one right, but do you want to share, since you prepared a joke, do you want to share it with us anyway?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So someone in a MAGA cap stopped by a bookstore in DC, and they asked the clerk if they had a copy of Donald Trump's new book on U.S. immigration policy. And the clerk saw the cap and they angrily replied, "Screw you, get out of here and stay out." And the Trump supporter replied, "Yes, that's the one. Do you have it in paper?"
Yes, that's a good joke. That is fantastic. You know, I used to have a line in my multiplying bottles routine where this was, toward the end of the Obama era, and I would have the whole audience yell "change" to make the bottle and the glass change places, and then they would be yelling "change," and I would say "I feel like Obama," and then I would make them yell "make him go back," and the audience would yell "make him go back," and I said "y'all sound like a Trump rally."
Yeah.
And it was a great line. It usually got a great laugh, but it stopped becoming funny when it started becoming more and more true and more serious. And I'm performing in these universities in Texas where people had their classmates being deported and stuff. And I'm like, I have to stop doing this joke.
Yeah. And now, especially now, I mean,
and
it's disgusting. I've actually had, for the first time ever, been in Congress 12 and a half years, some foreign students came into the office and were afraid to give me their names because they were in a federal office.
Yeah.
And they thought that somehow they could be affected by even coming just to talk to me about issues. And it's kind of chilling in many ways.
I don't blame them. In fact, I might even encourage them to not give me their real names just to set their mind at ease. Because it's is it up to how many actual legal citizens have been deported now? Is it like 70 or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, between that and in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, ICE detained a family at a mall that was speaking in Spanish, and they're Puerto Rican. I mean, so they're American citizens, and they still were nonetheless detained. And then we had another person. I went and visited the ICE facility in Wisconsin. We only have one, and it's at a county jail. They contract for beds, but someone was there because he was accused of writing a threatening letter to Donald Trump, but it was proven that he's illiterate in both English and Spanish. So he couldn't have written it. And finally, they caught the person, and the person did it just to try to get the guy deported. But and they didn't immediately release him. So I'm not even sure if he's yet released by ICE. So it's pretty chilling when you look at what they're doing. Yeah.
And there's so many of these cases that we are everyone's just suffering from fatigue from keeping up with them all, which is the plan, I think. So, all right, well, let's move on with our subject matter, which you know a lot about, and I'm not surprised that you know a lot about. For question 2, we're going to play for a pen from your office. So if you get it wrong, I get a pen from your office, but if you get it right, you get a pen from my office. So
nice.
Yours, I assume, says something along the lines of, House of Representatives or something. Mine say BIC. So it's a pretty fair trade.
Yeah.
We know that the Harry Houdini Museum in Appleton houses a large collection of Houdini memorabilia. What U.S. university is home to one of the largest publicly accessible collections of magic memorabilia, including Houdini artifacts? Is it A, Yale University, B, University of Texas at Austin, or C, the University of Chicago?
Texas at Austin.
Wow. I thought that was a hard one.
No, they have actually a great collection. I've never seen it, but talk to people who've been through it, and
that's the Harry Ransom Center. I can't. I'm going to send you a pen. If I have one with my name on it, I'll send it. But I might write it on it. I might have to get a tiny little pen and write my name on a pen. It's called the Harry Ransom Center at UT Austin. It holds a vast archive of magic-related artifacts. They have original Houdini materials, but it's also one of the resources for researchers who study magic and skepticism. So there's a lot of information in there. And one of these days, I've not been to UT Austin. I've been to a few other UT campuses, but not Austin. One of these days I'll get down there and see it. So,
and I got to tell you, a reason I knew recently, Josh Jay was here doing a show at the Kennedy Center.
Sure.
And a few of the folks that were there the next morning, the Library of Congress had set up a little exhibit of some Houdini stuff, because about half of Houdini's book collection or so is at the Library of Congress, but they have a lot of other, I think it's something like 25,000 magic related artifacts. And they just set up a few, and they brought up this center. So I have to admit, I may not have remembered exactly where it was, but that helped me out quite a bit.
That's why we do multiple choice. So if that way, it's not that serious of a quiz. Now for question 3, we always play for the same prize. It is a sticker. The internet says it's true. Ooh. It's 3 inches, it's square, and it's sticky. Nice. And these are valued at under $50, so I don't think you have to report them to the House Ethics Committee if you get one of these. I think we're fine. Which U.S. president was rumored but never confirmed to have held seances at the White House? Was it A, Theodore Roosevelt, B, Calvin Coolidge, or C, Woodrow Wilson?
Oh, I do not know this one. I'm going to go with Dead Radio, huh? Isn't this great? I will Calvin Coolidge.
The answer is Calvin Coolidge. Even your guesses, you're just on it. I swear we did not set this up for Mr. Pocan to have won these first 3. It was never officially confirmed, but rumors persisted in the 1920s that Calvin Coolidge's wife may have hosted seances at the White House. And these rumors were actually apparently mentioned during that 1926 Houdini congressional hearing.
That's why I think it was in back of the head. Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, that name sounded right. If you would have said Harding, though, you might have thrown me off. For some reason, I had Harding was the first name that came to mind.
Yeah.
But we're good.
Yeah, Harding. No, it's Calvin Coolidge is who it was. You are 3 for 3. Absolutely killing it. For question 4, we're going to play for a mention of this podcast on your next Magic Mondays video. So if you get this one wrong, you've got to give us a mention. But if you get it right, you're going to have to actually mention this podcast on your next Magic Mondays video, which is a little twist.
Good.
Which famous Houdini trick is replicated in a display at the museum in Appleton? Is it A, the vanishing elephant?
I don't even need the choices.
Yeah, tell me.
It's the milk can escape.
Oh, okay. Now, wait a minute. That wasn't one of the choices, because that might be there.
All right, they do.
The vanishing elephant, the Chinese water torture cell, or the bullet catch?
I think they might also have a Chinese water torture cell.
That would be the one. Yeah. I don't think he ever did a bullet catch.
No, that's what they do.
Now, I will tell you also, they also have a water torture cell, and I'm not sure if it was built. I doubt it's original. At Keller's Comedy and Magic Club in Erie, PA, where I just performed recently. They have one in the lobby that you can stand behind, and it looks like you're in it, which is really cool.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, no, this one I actually did a Magic Monday at the Houdini Museum with a former colleague of mine, Mike Gallagher, a Republican from the Fox Valley area in Wisconsin. So I've been there, but they actually have a milk can that exposes a little bit of the secret too.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I'm not sure I like that.
No.
Yeah. But yeah, when I was young, I was in my teens as a magician. I almost bought a milk can escape. And if milk can is something it's like a straitjacket where kids today have no idea what this is or what it was used for. But it's a big silver. It's big, but it's not big when a human's inside of it. And you fill it with water, put the lid on with padlocks, and escape from it. And my parents talked me out of it, which I'm glad, because here I am, having built a career not doing escapes and not being serious or anything like that. But back then, I thought that was the next logical step in my career.
So my midlife crisis, when I turned 50, I bought a used Canon brand milk can escape, and I have it in my basement right now.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Which I will never probably do. I don't know why I bought it. But it did come with a little water heater, which I thought was interesting, because otherwise that water is so cold, you
can't move.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, a little interesting thing, not sharing the secret, just
Well, I know that Houdini used to practice for his his escapes in water in the bathtub with ice water. And he would try to hold his breath in ice water. And so for him, he probably didn't need the water heater, but for us mortals, we probably would.
Well, and Copperfield has that bathtub in his museum
Does
in
he?
Las Vegas.
I don't
He
remember
actually
seeing
had
it.
half of the bookcase from Houdini's home in Manhattan and the
Yes.
bathtub that he did that are in the museum that David Copperfield has.
Yeah, I remember the
Yeah.
bookcase. I think I have a picture of me in front of the bookcase, but I know that he also has a water torture cell in there.
Yeah.
And my thought of it when I saw it was that it's much smaller than I imagined in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Much smaller. Well, humans were smaller. Houdini was not a big guy, but also when you think about your feet are above the top of that, it cuts you
Right.
down by another 6 or 8 inches. So yeah, really, really cool to see. So you have you've done well. You've gone 4 for 4 in this one, but the next one is for all the marbles. So if you get this one right, you're 5 for 5. You're welcome back on the podcast anytime. But if you get it wrong, you'll be banned from this podcast for life.
Okay.
Which I assume will make headlines.
Yeah.
Question 5. Nearly 100 years after Houdini's testimony before Congress, we're still dealing with misinformation. We got
Mhm.
AI deepfakes, election denial, financial scams. As someone who's working inside the system, how do you think we can get better, not only like individuals, but as a country, at recognizing fraud when we see it?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the problem is people only get the information they want to see now, right? Through social media. So they only see that media. So honestly, the best thing is, use all parts of your brain and expose yourself to other media than you're maybe used to, because you ultimately have to make that decision, for what's correct and what's not. It used to be that if a network TV said it when there was very few media choices, you knew it was true. Now there is so much disinformation. So finding that news source that you trust. Honestly, I hate to say this, but I often listen to the BBC, because an outside United States source, it may be a little more honest on what's happening in the United States than sometimes what we're seeing through all of the different many channels that are out there. But it's one of the 3 things I tell people right now who are upset about what's going on. One, litigation, support the groups that are fighting the Trump administration. This is an interesting fact I should have led with. Out of the 250 or so lawsuits against Donald Trump right now and things he's doing, we've had positive adjudications on over 184 of them already. And he is the caver in chief. They stop what they're doing when he loses the lawsuit. They may try to come back, but they actually abide by it. So supporting those groups, 1, fighting the disinformation by putting out real information and sharing on your social media. And then, 3, getting ready for the elections next year. So I gave you a long-winded answer, but
it's a right answer. And
Okay.
not only is it a right answer, it's really important. The thing that you said about the caving on the lawsuits is really interesting, and
I know, we
think
need to get
needs to
that
be
out there more.
publicized. Yeah.
I'm totally with you. In fact, Joe Neguse from Boulder, Colorado, one of my colleagues, great guy. He's one of the people, he and Jamie Raskin and some of the other lawyers in the caucus have started this, project to help give us this information. And I do a lot of town halls because I also do them in Republican districts, because I think, the biggest way to show that what they're saying isn't true, since they're not willing to have a town hall, is to go there. And just the fact that if this big, beautiful bill is so good, they should want to get on the rooftop and scream about it. Instead, they're hiding in their basements. So it's a great FU, to go and do a town hall and let people vent. And it is the best information at every single town hall, because people leave feeling a little bit uplifted with what's going on, because we are winning. And these attorney generals, Democratic attorney generals around the country, are working together and beating back on a lot of these issues, along with a lot of groups that are paying for these lawsuits.
It's great information, and it just shows us that TACO applies to not only tariffs but lawsuits as well. And it's amazing to hear. So you went 5 for 5, which barely anyone has done on this podcast.
You did it!
It's a huge feat, and I swear I did not make these easy for you. I thought that a couple of those were going to be difficult. So wonderful job.
I knew there was a big pen coming, and I didn't want to get banned from your podcast. So.
You get a sticker and a pen, which is fantastic. And it might be the only time I've ever sent mail to a Wisconsin legislator, or a federal legislator from Wisconsin, I should say.
And if I can, because I have a podcast with Liberty and Justice for Some, I want to make a plug for it too, because we're just trying to get that truth out there to fight the disinformation. And I get some pretty good guests on that, and I just want to mention that for your listeners as well.
With Liberty and Justice for Some. Go check that out. I'll put a link to it in the show notes as well, so people can just click right in there. Representative Pocan, it's been a pleasure having you on. Keep fighting the good fight. I always enjoy when I get to see you on TV, making headlines and doing all the things that you're doing. You can follow Representative Pocan on all the social media, and it's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you and Magic Live, maybe.
Probably not Magic Live. Maybe Magi Fest next winter,
good.
but that's about as close as we can get. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
That's all for this week. Thank you so much to Representative Mark Pocan for being my guest, and thanks to you for listening. Here's the voice of a young Harry Houdini.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make this show possible. Sean Brown, Joshua Endres, Dallas Ray, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Jim and Joanne Martin, Mitch and Andrew Joseph Kemplin, and the show's official emperor, Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and all audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.